So, how would you describe yourself as a leader?
Well, I believe that you can't do much of any significance by yourself. So I think it's important to have the right team behind you. And leadership requires the ability to share a vision and then rally that team into action. And that's really what's required to achieve something. I also try to listen more than I speak. I don't always get it right, but more often than not, I think the right answer is in the room. And so I try to stay out of the way to the extent possible and give those with the expertise for which they were hired the opportunity to take the lead and also take the credit for the wins.
Now, who or what do you think has shaped you as a leader?
That's such a tough question because there's such a long list. But I think in terms of early influencers, I very much admired my grandfather growing up. He managed the engineering lab for General Electric in Peterborough, Ontario. And I remember telling him about my first management job. And the advice that he gave me was that I needed to tap into what each member of my team wanted to achieve and what their goals were. And only by helping them to achieve their goals would I attain my own. So I think that's a very good piece of advice, and I reference it often. Other influencers, my mother worked and managed a family and balanced all of that in the 70s. And so I knew it was possible. And my father, although we like to joke about this within the family, I often refer to him as the original feminist because being a girl was never an excuse for not winning at pretty much anything. And it didn't matter who was involved, whether it was hockey with the boys in the neighborhood or whether it was hitting the most home runs. He was always pushing me to punch above my weight grade, I guess, and knowing full well sometimes that I'd be beaten, but he would always say, doesn't matter because now that just makes you better for the next time. So he was a very strong influence. And then in terms of my business career, there have been so many. And sometimes the other thing to note is that you don't always learn from positive examples. So I've had some crazy adventures over my 25 years or so, and but certainly learned from some incredible leaders too. And I think first and foremost, our founders and principal shareholders, Tim Burns and Rob Forsland, they took a girl on who had no experience as a CEO and first time CEO, but just a plain girl from Peterborough. So they took a chance on me. And I've worked very closely with our shareholders over the years, but in particular, Rob Forsland, who still is a strong influence, and he does all my editing when I write for various different publications. So I often refer to him as my editor-in-chief. Dodie Iverson, she's the person who hired me at Dryasy 11 years ago. And she was just this incredibly dynamic, smart woman who always pushed me and believed in me. So those are just a couple.
Yeah, that's awesome. For all great leaders, their teams are, core to their success. So what do you do to motivate your teams? And do you feel it's changed during the pandemic?
Well, I don't think any of us could ever have expected what we've been through over the past, 9 months now. And when we first set out on the journey, I will call it, our main priorities were really to keep the business up and running, to enact our business continuity plan, and obviously keeping our employees safe was always at the forefront of everything that we considered at the time. But as time has gone on, and this is really dragged out, and it looks like we're going to be probably still dealing with this into the first and second quarter of next year to some extent. The challenges of remote work have been that you don't get the usual amount of communication that you're used to. And when you're in the office, you hear and you see things as a leader that help shape your day. And so now if the information you have is really what people tell you. So we've focused on improving communication. And I think the key thing too is that we all have to take a longer term view of the situation. And so I think that's probably true in any unusual or crisis situation, is to keep your eye on the horizon as opposed to some of the obstacles that are right in front of you, because they can really be debilitating if you focus on them for too long. Mm-hmm. So keeping your eye on the future, and then making sure that the team feels successful. So celebrating the small wins, even though they may be small along the way, really does help to keep the morale high and keep people's energy levels up, because that can also be a challenge during these times.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, no, for sure. Now, from your perspective, what are some of the greatest attributes that leaders require, and any specific advice for the next generation of leaders that you may have?
Well, in terms of attributes, I think the first thing is to start with belief. You have to start with the belief that you can achieve what it is that you are setting out to do. Next one would be show up, because it seems like a simple piece of advice, but many people don't. And just by showing up and making your best effort every day of the week, you've got to work hard and be willing to do the things that other people aren't willing to do. Be willing to work a little bit harder, and make sure that you're the person they want on the team. Be so good that they can't put you in the corner.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that's awesome. Now, if you could close your career with 2 more accomplishments, what would they be?
You know, Sarah, that's a tough one, because I think it's an ever evolving thing. And if you would have asked me that question 10 years ago, I've crossed those things off the list. So for me, it's really never been about, salary or a certain position. Mm-hmm. It's never been about a certain role. It's always been about achieving the best out of every day. Mm-hmm. And so I guess maybe I wouldn't want to limit myself. Mm-hmm. But in terms of accomplishments, or what have been the greatest ones so far, I would have to say that undoubtedly would be my children, because they are really the driving force behind everything that I've done from a career perspective. And so they're grown, fantastically talented people who are now carving out their own niche in the world. So I would say that number 1, 2, 3, and 4 on the list are my children.
Yeah. No, that's amazing. Now, what do you think should be the role, should be or needs to be, in terms of tackling diversity and inclusion challenges in the workplace?
Diversity is such a complex topic, and I don't think there's a right answer to that, other than to say that as leaders, we need to do a better job of casting a wider net, mm-hmm. so that we can attract the best talent to the organization, and without regard to a person's packaging. Mm-hmm. And, that includes all forms that people may consider to be disadvantageous. And I think that's really what it comes down to, is that, in some ways, there's a perceived disadvantage based on your packaging. And I just don't see it that way at all. And so I think, the main point there is not only for leaders to cast a wider net, but also to stand up for the best ideas in the room. I can't tell you how many times I've been in a boardroom, and, there might be one other woman in the boardroom. And sometimes, it's difficult to stand up when you see something happening that isn't right, or just stand up for the best idea in the room, regardless of whose idea it might be. So I think those are important things. I also believe that we have to be open to continuously learning, and to have the conversations, and to be open to learning as we go, because it's not a journey that is going to be that we can easily see a finish line to. This is something that is an evolution and is going to take many more years to fully achieve the kind of parity that everyone deserves.
Now, balancing the mind as a leader is so important. So how do you create that balance? What do you do in your free time?
What free time?
Oh, no.
I really enjoy the outdoors, and the skis and the snowshoes have now come out of the closet. So I'm hoping that we get some snow over the holidays.
Mhm.
I love to travel, so I really look forward to a time when we can all get back to visiting new places and exploring the world.
Mhm.
I love to cook, and I enjoy great wine along with it.
Mhm.
So those are just kind of some of the things in the summertime. When the skis go away, then I like to pull out the golf clubs. But I don't often have time. Golf takes too much time.
Yeah. But very important, right?
Yes. Yeah,
Now,
in fact,
mhm.
oftentimes the best ideas or problem-solving moments have come for me when I'm not in the office. And so taking time away is very important and really should not be deprioritized.
Mhm. And I've heard that quite a bit from all the leadership sort of journeys is when you're actually removing yourself from the day to day and giving your time to think while you're relaxing, where some of the best ideas, may come from.
Yeah, absolutely.
Then what would you say is your leadership credo that you feel is core to your success?
I believe that I'm going to just borrow. I'll borrow from my grandfather, who taught me with my first management job that only by helping others achieve their goals will you attain yours.
Mhm. Yeah. Well, that's a fantastic one. Now, if you ever have an opportunity to write a book on, all your leadership journey or something you'd like to pass along, what would you write about or what would you call the book?
I think I would focus on practical advice, and I think the title of the book would be "What Are You Waiting For?"
Mhm. Cool.
You know, many of us have great ideas, and many of us know what needs to be done, but we don't always take the action or follow through. So I
Mhm.
think my book would be focused on how to follow through and how to overcome the biggest obstacle, which is in your own mind.
Mhm. Yeah. Now, if you could give a quote that would be the legacy of yourself as a leader, what would you like that quote to be?
I would say believe, show up, and do your best.
Mhm.